they're saying that the lack of engineering design fundamentals, it's also more obvious because of these automated code generation tools, AI. And they say, I feel like my position as a reasonably smart and adaptable code monkey will be hollowed out in the coming years. Aside from this, the need for me to deepen my skill in architecture, design, best practices, networking, security, scalability, it's sort of tech debt I have built up as somewhat a fake senior. And the question is, how did you pull yourself out of this mid-career slump? Bogdan, how would you do it?
So let's review a bit. They've been a couple of years doing C#, now jumped into JavaScript straight to the senior level, he mentioned, where they're kind of surviving, but now obviously the pressure went up because there's a lot more code and we're shipping code a lot much faster. So you need to be sharp. The number one thing I would say is I would take actually a step inwards rather than outwards and focus on the low level stuff. So I would focus on debugging, on understanding web performance, understanding the critical rendering path, understanding the V8 engine, the Ignatian, the code interpreter in Google Chrome, understanding how browsers interpret the DOM, how the CSS DOM is built, and really going deep and then mastering what we have in the browser. The browser is probably the most powerful and complex debugging tool that you have in all software development. There's so many levels you can use it. And so then I would probably build on top with, best practice and design. The thing about design patterns is, yes, maybe you got rejected. All of us, I think, got rejected at some point because we didn't know design patterns. But to understand design patterns, you need to understand the problem they are solving, because a design pattern is just something that solves a recurrent problem. So that would be the last thing I would do. And regarding calling himself a code monkey, adaptable code monkey, I wouldn't get into calling yourself names or putting a label on it. It doesn't really help with the mindset. But I would definitely try to be very proactive, review as much code as you can and write as much code as you can, because if they keep going like this, then it's not that they get replaced by AI, it's that they cannot, keep up with the new pace of doing things.
Confidence comes from competence, right? So if you feel like a fake senior, there's probably certain gaps that you left unattended. And it happens. It's not about you, right? I mean, many developers, you jump from job to job. If you never have a mentor, or if you never had a moment in your career where you said, hey, let me engineer this, let me look into the gaps I have, where do I want to become, then almost by default you will get towards this point. I think we've all been there. This is very common, but you can fix it, right? And as Bogdan said, going deeper into the fundamentals, and Bogdan, you were saying something about, everybody talks about best practices and networking and security and system design, but nobody really understands the DOM, right?
The biggest paradox right now is that for us to learn things, you usually need to start things from scratch. You need to see how you would set up a module bundle from scratch. You need to design a REST API without higher order frameworks. And then we add frameworks. And the problem with all AI coding is that it always basically defaults to React, and it does so much for you that you never get a chance to see all these abstraction layers. So when an error happens, people are just lost because they don't know all these things that have built upon. Once you can see through that stack, you look at the code AI produces and it will seem pretty obvious to you, and it would even seem like not as good code. Yes, you'll be amazed by the speed at which is churning it out, but other than that, there's no magic to it. You know all those layers. You can jump into any of the layers and you'll find solutions faster than Cloud Code does. You will be, trust me, much faster than the AI if you know what you're doing. It will be obvious for you where the mistake is, and people will be querying AI and waiting for the half an hour rotating thing and putting another PR that changes 15 files and nobody knows what they do. So it seems counterintuitive, but what I would recommend is going backwards, starting and building things from scratch, going into Vanilla.js, make sure you dominate Vanilla.js, and then building your way up to the modern stack.
And by the way, the best way to do that is to first understand what's missing. That's why, folks, in the comments, there's a free technical assessment for JavaScript devs. You will go through a bunch of questions across the full stack, and as a result, you will get a PDF with all the different dimensions, all the different gaps, which is probably the best starting point for you to get out of this, whether fake senior or you're just a mid-level and you want to level up and move towards a confident full stack engineer. With that being said, thank you, Bogdan, and we will see you folks in the next one.